Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Hometown History, and this is our extra episode with Charles Chub Neiman and Jim Gross, and I'm Dami, and this is Jamie.
So a little bit of background, we like to bring experts on to ask them about their experiences because Dami and I are relatively new to the history scene, whereas Chub, how long have you been in York County?
83 years.
He's just got a few years on us, not that much.
Jim, how about you?
I came here in 1980.
So I think, I love how in York County we like to say, like, well, what high school did you go to? Like, that's how deep rooted it is. Look, you went to high school here, right?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
York High. Yeah. There is no other place. They claim to have schools around there, but they don't.
Chubb, so you're 83?
Yeah.
So I'm going to be 33 tomorrow.
Good.
You've got 50 years on me.
Believe me, I won't go there.
It's all wisdom.
So we're going to ask them some questions, and after about 10 to 15 minutes, then we'll turn it to you if you guys have questions, because these are gems, just like Samantha Dorm earlier sharing. These are people who have lived York, they know the history, and so now is the time to ask them questions. And Dami and I are recording this, and so we are adding to the documented history so future generations can go back and watch this. It's kind of like our own archives that we're creating. So I thought we'd start with you, Chub. We spent some time on the Penn building.
Right.
Could you bring us up to speed and what's going on with it now?
Well, I just happen to have the original dedication booklet, and it's rather extensive. I'll leave it here, you can take a look at it. This was quite a project when they built this building, and it's a very extensive dedication. To make a long story short, the building has been allowed to deteriorate substantially. I originally took a look at it about 2 years ago and worked with Tom Landis. And I want to say Tom Landis and Janet Green from the City Parks Department and the Public Works people have been absolutely helpful and cooperative in all of these efforts and understanding that their problem is they're just overwhelmed with what has to be done. And that's where we need you folks and the people you know to get behind these projects to get them done. Because York has changed. We no longer have the big money donors. Those days are over. So we're dealing with nickel and dime stuff as we go along. And it's going to take a huge effort, for example, in the Penn building, to restore that building. I had hoped originally, 2 years ago when Tom Landis and I met with one of the contractors that I know to come and take a look at it. He took a look at it and he said, Chuck, I don't know what I can do. I'll do my best and I'll see whether or not the vendors will give me some supplies. And that fell flat on its face because of the economy and so on. So if you're looking for in-kind donations, those also are getting slim as we go along. So it ended up that we got a quote to refurbish the building. The floor has to be repaired. The roof has to be repaired. There's some masonry work that has to be done, and I have a guy that has agreed to do that for free. But anyway, the bottom line is $171,000. That's big time. That is big time. So we have to almost look at that as being a distant objective. There are other things that can be done before that, which I think will be less expensive and kind of more beneficial to the park. The problem is at this point, preventing further deterioration, if that can be done. And we'll have to take a look at that. But Tom Landis and I will try to address that particular problem. But that's where we are. It's a significant historical building, and it should be refurbished, but it isn't going to be done. It's certainly not going to be done immediately, and it won't be done without your help.
Well, And I think you said something important, Chub. You had someone who was willing to donate their time to work on the masonry work. And so the people in this room, every single person has something that they can contribute, whether that is picking up trash or if you have a skill that you can give back. It doesn't always have to be monetary or fiscal. It can also just be sweat equity as well. Jim, I was wondering, we were thinking about what the rail trail would do to the park and how that would change that, and the difference that it would make for the community. Could you tell us your thoughts on the spur of the rail trail going closer to Penn Park?
Well, I think it certainly is be a great idea if they can make it, if somebody can make it happen. There is, of course, a project in the works for the Cador's Greenway, which would make a significant difference to the whole Cador's Creek area, and which would attract many more people to the creek. If you can start bringing those people up to the park, I think it'd be wonderful. And I don't think it would be that difficult to do. I think it is something that certainly could be accomplished. Just has to be incorporated into a plan, and hopefully can make it happen. Just following back on Chub's comments about the building, I do believe the city has raised some funds for materials. What they really need is contractors. So there is a contractor or a group of contractors out there that could sort of pool their resources to help. That's another possibility of a way to get something done. So,
Jim, how many years did you spend working in public works in New York City?
Well, my career was spanned about 38 and a half years. Some of that was with the city of Lancaster for about 13 of those, but I started here in 1980 as assistant park superintendent and worked in Penn Park. And I remember Jack Van Newkirk. Jack Van Newkirk was the superintendent of schools for the city of New York. And Jack's eyes were on the park at all times. He cared very much for his buildings, but he also cared for Penn Park. And Jack would call me pretty much constantly. He was on my case a lot. I could tell something that was wrong in Penn Park. And Jack and I became friends later in life, and we became very good friends. But I guess the point is, we need people with eyes on the park, because if people have eyes on the park, they pay attention, just like Chub. We need more Chub Neiman. But people pay attention to what's out there. Bad things aren't going to happen because they know people are watching them. So more people that use the park, more people that have eyes on the park, can only make things better.
I want to highlight one of the most important things you said, and that is, we poached you from Lancaster. You came here from Lancaster?
I started with the city of New York, went to Lancaster, and
then came back because you realized how great this is, and you realized this is where we need you, right?
It's not like we have a rivalry with Lancaster or anything.
I'm not jealous.
I have this rail trail. I'd like to add something to that, and if you don't mind, I'll just read what I put together, because I do have a tendency in my age to get lost and ramble. Anyway, it's an idea that I've been toying with, and I think it could be done. Interestingly enough, in my thoughts and research for this, I contacted the Rail Trail Authority, seeing whether they may be interested. They dropped it like a hot potato. And they said, that's not our responsibility. The Rail Trail Authority doesn't want anything to do with it. We could perhaps support the idea, but it's really the city's decision. So now we know where we really are. But incorporating Penn Park's resources into the rail trail could benefit both groups' usages and visibility by creating a short trail spur 5 minutes from downtown New York. For example, the spur could start at College Avenue, wind past the old York Hospital, emphasizing the history of the hospital, to the mid-block alley. There's a little alley on Oak Lane that goes up to Pershing Avenue. And they're going to join the Penn Park, where downtown workers could enjoy a brown bag lunch or a brisk walk. I got it. Okay. Bear with me, folks. A brisk walk on the many pathways of Penn Park. To me, this would be a win-win situation. The park usage as a multi-purpose activity area would increase while serving as a deterrent to nefarious activities associated with the park and the crime-ridden perception that exists of downtown New York. Considering that the park is bounded on the north by York High and St. Pat's, on the east by the York City School Administration Building, the south by Zion UC, Wellspan, which is right over here, and Christmas Attics. And Christmas Attics, by the way, uses our building for their Christmas parties. So we have a very good relationship there. But considering that down on the west side, it is so close to what the tremendous new Thaxton Park development area. If you haven't had an opportunity to see what they've done by tearing down the old project and putting up the new one, you think you're in a whole different town. It's incredible. But with the help of York College and Thaxton Park being down there, I believe that Penn Park and its surroundings around Penn Park could become the ideal opportunity for home ownership and development. Because Penn Park, at this point in time, is basically surrounded, the neighborhood is tenant, absentee owner occupied. And that doesn't help us at all. If we can renovate and restore some of the very attractive buildings before they get away from us, we may be able to attract owners, property owners, who would have skin in the game, which is the way I remember Penn Park when I was going to York High. There was a lot of the kids lived there in homes owned by their parents, and that really created a skin in the game, eyes on the park situation. And I think if we can get back to that, the park will come back. But we all have to work together to encourage home ownership in the area in addition to the park.
One of the things that we highlighted tonight with the park is the cycles of rebirth and then also decline. And so we've noticed when we looked at park usage, something happened in the 1980s with the elk, which just bugs the crap out of me that like someone thought it was wise. I want to blame it on teenagers. I don't know who did it, but like someone's brain wasn't fully developed that they thought it was appropriate to go behead our precious elk. But if you look at the park usage then, it seemed like the 1980s, it's been in a decline. So Jim, Chub, what are your thoughts on how can we then, maybe you can comment on that decline and or how can then we get back out of it?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. There was a decline in the 80s, and I remember the elk. My recollection was in 1980 when I came here, he had a hole. I'm not sure if he had a hole in the side or someone had thrown rocks or something and damaged him and deteriorated from that point and eventually had to be taken down, unfortunately. But there is a cycle, and I think now the cycle is going the other way, and the question is, can we keep that momentum going to continue to push it to a better, even a better place than what it is now? So all things are sacred, Bill, I guess.
Yeah.
I thought your history of the park was fantastic, what you did this evening, and it's certainly very interesting, and you can see from that history how the park, changed over the years, and I think there is certainly a potential for its rebirth. So I think you got to keep working for the positive things.
Well, from the standpoint, I don't need that. From the standpoint of where was the park and where is it now? We look at the 80s and the elk, but it really changed, if you think about this, it really changed in 1957. And the reason it changed in 1957 is because they built York Suburban. New York Suburban changed the exit to the suburbs, changed the cultural environment of the park neighborhood. It changed the city. Okay, now we're never going to bring that back, but we do have to put everything in perspective. Because once a neighborhood changes and the cultural changes, you no longer, you find the respect for things decline. And that's what happened in this particular area. I know that when we put together the master plan, there was a revitalization team created for the master plan, and Jim knows this. It was funded by the Cultural Alliance, former Cultural Alliance, and they commissioned a study for all of the parks, the master plan for the parks in the city. and we got together a revitalization team and had meetings here to discuss what the problems were in the area. And back in 2010, one of the big issues that came up was crime at that time. So this is not a new issue. But where we are right now, which has been a big help, is that we do have, and have had for some time, we've had police surveillance using our camera equipment here, which has done an awful lot to tamp down the crime. It's not nearly as bad as it had been, especially drug use. Drugs are everywhere, let's face it. To overcome that, again, I think we need to return to the home ownership idea of the surrounding neighborhood. The return, if possible, to looking at the park as a community of nuclear families. I think that this has got to be a critical issue of any redevelopment or revitalization effort for any town. You can't just throw money at these things and expect that to serve the problem. And that's what's been done. What we have here is there's no need to reinvent the wheel if all we need is to fix a spoke. We have the assets. All we need is the ability to do that. The problem is it takes money and it takes dedication. Those two things are in short supply. I know from getting these pavilions down here, the only way to do it is with grants, matching grants or total grants. Other than that, there just is not enough money available in the city budget to accomplish what everybody is demanding. So we have to set priorities, and we all have to contribute $1 here and $1 there to get the job done. If we don't, this is never gonna happen.
If only we had someone who knew grants in York County that was in the audience right now. It's a Sam Dorm I'm calling out.
Well, the city actually is advertising for a grant officer. I got a grant for the pavilions because there was an article in the paper. Okay, there was a little article in the paper about the Marcellus sale open, and you and I were on conference calls about this. And I saw a little article in the paper about the Marcellus sale open space grant. And I thought, well, hell, that'll work for me. Okay, so I got in touch with Wade Gobert, who's the head of and this is how it works. Okay, the old saying was that it's who you know makes a big difference, okay? Let's not kid ourselves on that. Anyway, I got in touch with him and I said, look, I have no clue as to how to do this, okay? And he said, what are you looking at, Chub? I said, oh, maybe 5,000. He said, 5,000? Go for 15, pal, okay? I said, I have no idea how to fill out the form. He said, I'll walk you through it. I believe in what you're doing. That was the key. I believe in what you're doing. I'll help you. Okay, through his help, went in front of the county commissioner, and one day my wife said to me, look there, you got your grant. I said, you kidding? I didn't believe it, okay? Then when I turned to the city, the problem was with Tom Landis and Jazz Green, they have to go through loops, as you know, hoops to spend the money. I couldn't believe it. Jim would know more about this than I do. So finally, you get something done, but if you want to get the attention of the powers to be, you have to have an incentive. In this particular case, it happened to be that grant that allowed the project to move ahead, and with their cooperation. And honest to God, I have a great deal of admiration for the people that work in government. I mean, what they have to put up with sometimes, the red tape is astonishing. And if we all realize that and realize what it takes to get the job done, we can get the job done. But we can't make it too big a job. You know, you can't eat the whole apple. It's easier to slice the apple And that's what we really have to do.
And break it up into parts and work together.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, so one of the last questions for you two, I'm actually going to extend it to the audience because I am interested in what the audience has to share, but Jim and Chub, you guys are more than welcome to get it started. After this presentation, when I look out over Penn Park, I'm going to see different things. I'm going to see the Civil War military hospital and the nurses like Cassandra who was helping people. I'm going to see Charles Braxton yelling at kids who, threw a rock at his house and his horse gutter and all these different things that happened. So when you look out at the park, do you have any favorite memories or something that you see that sticks out to you? And this doesn't just have to be for Jim and Chub too. I'm interested in the audience. If you have any positive memories of Penn Park that you'd be willing to share, we'd love to hear it.
Well, I'll speak again. Okay? One of the things that stands out to me, and my colleagues we all graduated from New York High in 1957. But at that time, if you opened your yearbook, every class picture was taken in front of the soldiers and sailors monument. So it was right there. There are so many memories of what was in that park. It was a gathering place for us, the kids, and I'd like to see that happen again.
Real quick, so as someone that graduated in 1988, in regards to health, I am never ever going to be in support of vandalism. I graduated in 88, city kid. I couldn't tell you if that was an elk, a moose, a deer. We didn't know. So there was no connection to it because it wasn't anything that a child from the city by that time had seen or experienced. You have a greater connection being from a rural area and having that, but I couldn't tell you what that means. So no, I don't condone vandalism, but I understand that people didn't feel connected. So one of my other Bearcats, a couple years ahead of me, sir.
I think the park has great bones, and especially the walkways. And those are the historical paths, and people have cut through those diagonals for years and years, and you still see people walking those paths. It would be a shame if that ever goes away. That's the last piece of what the park was. I know the soldiers and Sarah memorial is there, but those walkways are just as critical and need to preserve. But the park really, it's cultural, it's historical, it's social. It meets all the elements of a great park. It's just underutilized. It really needs more than a facelift. It's a true gem of New York City, and it needs to be transformational for it to have the impact that it could have. We're doing a lot of small things, and we've got a lot of spirit and volunteer efforts here, but that park deserves true transformation so that it can be all it can be. That's the only way we're going to tie it downtown. It's 4 minutes away, but you have to give people a reason to walk 4 minutes to have lunch. I admire everything you've done there, jumping pavilions and everything, but it's got to be a little more than that for me to go 4 minutes extra to sit there and have lunch. But it has all of those bones to be a great park because there's no other park in New York that has everything that Penn Park has.
We keep referring to the park as being historical, and I don't know if you or Jim know, is it on the historic registry of the park or any buildings on the park? Is it a part of the historic registry that would make it eligible for preservation funds?
Oddly enough, there are several grants that I've been investigating, and I must tell you this, okay? I'm tired, okay? You folks have to find somebody to step up and lead the charge, okay? I'm at the end with the pavilions. I certainly would like to see the park attached to the rail trail, and that's an easy thing to promote if we get leaders. Okay, we have to have leaders. But as far as the grants are concerned, oddly enough, I was contacted 2 years ago, or maybe last year, by a guy in Harrisburg with the AARP. Now, who ever heard of this thing? Anyway, I think he might have been on one of those calls, Jim. They have a program, and I just talked to him. They have a program, for example, to make open spaces accessible to senior citizens. And I explained to him what my idea about the park being joined with the rail trail. And he said, we could step up and help you with signage, okay? It's that kind of stuff, the nickel and dime stuff, that could bleed you dead, bleed you dry on a project. And that's available. There are some, I also have been contacted by the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission. And there are all these grants out there, but unless you know which one to go to, you're just floundering. Mm-hmm. And this fellow said, the guy that I contacted, Chub, he said, I used to live on Madison Avenue. I'm your guy. Okay, but I don't handle that grant. But here's who you want to talk to. So now I have that grant to follow up on. But there's so many opportunities out there that we just have to get it. The Gannett Corporation, the newspaper chain, they have a tremendous grant program. I looked at them and I tried with them, but they go through a third-party vendor. And they make it so damn difficult for the average guy to try to get a hold of what they need for a grant. They tire you out. They're just exasperated.
Sir, I can make this easier for all of us.
What's that?
I can make this easier for all of us.
Yep.
It really is about priorities.
Yep.
Okay? You used that word a little bit earlier.
Yep.
I'm a former city employee. I'm a former County of York employee. I don't work for government anymore, so I can speak. Okay? And working with the grants, just earlier today, I did a webinar talking about American Rescue Plan funding and what's happening with it all across the country. If the park is a priority, not just for the city of York, but for the County of York, who provides the funds for the rail trail, they have the discretion right now to make that funding available. What happens with the city oftentimes is when the city puts in a request, they leave it with the city. The Marcellus Shell grant has been around for many, many years. We've used it for a number of parks throughout the county, Dallastown, Jacobus, so on and so forth. But the city puts in an offer or puts in a request, and the county will say, city, you have your own money. If it is a priority, if it is an asset, a county asset, not just the city, then we collectively as a community can go before the commissioners, can go before the York County Planning Commission and say, we need the money released, be it $171,000 plus, for Penn Park today. If we want to talk about crime, there's things called crime prevention through environmental design. Part of that is just being able to make sure that we cut the trees so that they're high enough for visibility. But that costs money. If it is a priority, it is an eligible expenditure right now, today, utilizing American Rescue Plan funding. Anything that would be eligible for CDBG, Community Development Block Grant, which includes public spaces, public services, are eligible. What do we have going on in Washington, D.C. right now? There is an attempt that for communities that have not obligated their American Rescue Plan funding, that they will pull that money back because the assumption is that we don't need it. We need projects obligated. We can't deal with this back and forth of people not prioritizing. We can do it today before we lose the money.
So if there's one thing from tonight's presentation you learn, that we have extremely knowledgeable and passionate people in the room and resources right here that we can access. So thank you, Chub. Thank you, Jim, for joining us. Please grab them after if you have any further questions. And thank you so much for coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.